Alrighty. We're live on Facebook, it looks like. Okay. So let me just hit the record button. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are tuning in from. So we are live here on Zoom on my Facebook page, which is Angeline Constantino. So my name is Angeline Constantino. I am the founder and CEO of Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. And today I have a very, very special guest with us, and we are going to be talking about how we're going to learn how Allie McDonnell walked out of shame after childhood sexual trauma. So if you are watching this live right now, please let us know in the comments, #live. Let us know where you are tuning in from so we can give you a shout out. And if you are watching the replay, please #replay. So I am super, super excited. Allie McDonnell and I connected through Facebook through a mutual friend who was a special guest on my podcast, and she's been a staunch supporter of my cause. So my podcast, Let's Break the Silence with Angeline, what we do is we give women a voice. There is power in your voice. There is power in sharing your story. So we are here to build a community of sisterhood, and please like, follow, and subscribe to Let's Break the Silence with Angeline on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts and on my YouTube channel. And this podcast episode will be live on my YouTube channel on Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. So without further ado, let's get right into this. So Allie McDonnell is a survivor of intrafamilial childhood sexual abuse who was able to find spiritual connection and emotional healing through writing and journaling. She feels there was always a spiritual light and longing in the little girl that was pulling her forward, even in the darkest times. Allie's message is that we are much more than anything that may have happened to us, and we don't have to let our past become a prison of shame and isolation. She believes that when we accept our past, we can be embraced, loved, strengthened, and empowered by the sharing of our stories in a safe place. Allie is the author of Walking Out of Shame. In it, she writes, quote, "I am sharing my story with you now because when I discovered the truth that I could walk out of the heavy shame I was carrying and still be embraced and welcomed, I wanted to dance a jig. I wanted to shout it out to anyone who would listen." So welcome, Allie. Welcome to my podcast, and welcome to my world. So I always ask all my guests here, what is the time right now where you are?
Thank you, Angelina. The time right now is 10:22 a.m.
Yeah, time flies, right?
Yes,
Here in Stuart, Florida. So never mind the background here, everyone. I'm in the process of getting some furniture and furnishing. So it's been quite a journey. So Allie, I know your story really touches a lot of people because there's so many women who suffer from childhood sexual trauma. So what happened? What happened during your childhood? And how did you come out of it? And how did you come out of it? What were some of the tools and the resources that you used, that you utilized to take your power back?
Yeah, that was quite a journey to try to kind of sort that all out when I was writing the book. So I was sexually abused by my father. It started when I was about 5, with just my sitting on the lap and on his lap, and he would touch me in places that felt strange and uncomfortable, but it was like this was my father. This was someone that I trusted and felt like he knew much better than I did what was okay, what wasn't okay. And I had no words, it was just like for how I felt about that at the time. I just really, and so I grew up that it started there, and I kind of grew up with that. And I talk about in my book, this was the same father who, I mean, he was also the person who helped me through my math homework, and who, was, and I wrote a story in grade school, and he's the one that sent it off to Highlight magazine, and thought it was good enough. But these were moments that it's like they fed me. He was my father, but he wasn't always the daddy that I wanted. He was also scary sometimes, and I just grew up kind of inculcated. He would say that what was happening was okay. People outside of my house would not understand, but they made beautiful things not beautiful. They had these ideas. And he told me by the time I was 7, I would say I knew this wasn't like what was happening in the outside world. He told me, well, you can't talk about this, because if you do, then I'll be taken away by the police. That could be taken away by the police, and I could be taken
Right.
to jail, and for some people that would be yay, but in my state as a child then, that was, oh no, I don't want my daddy taken away. And it was enough to keep me silent, you know
Mm.
and so and I just, the hardest part, Angeline, the shame part came in, where it's like, okay, it didn't stop till I was 18 years old, and how was I continuing to
Mm.
do this? How did I not? So my sister she was able to stand up for herself. She was able to say no, but I was so mired in being afraid and wanting to please my father, wanting both love and safety from my father. And I just, it was that I got caught up in that, and I feel like now that I didn't really know better, because this is what I grew up with. This was my daily upbringing.
Mm.
But I got to feel uncomfortable with it, because it's like, yeah, just what is going on here, you know? And
Okay. Yeah, being silenced because yeah, that's that. Wow. Um, because I've interviewed other women who have gone through childhood sexual trauma, and that's not easy. Now, here, your sister had the courage. So it took you probably, I'm assuming, a long time to finally come out with your story. So,
yeah.
what was the turning point for you in sharing your story and coming out? Because I know that you were afraid that your father, were you afraid of retaliation at first?
I just didn't, yeah, I just didn't know, because he could be volatile. I mean, he
Mm.
was also violent in at times, and he could be very volatile, and was hitting my mother, and so yeah, so that's part of what kept me silent. But the question was, what was the turning point, right?
Mhm.
So there were several things that happened along the way, but I think the real turning point didn't happen until I was like 62. And I
Okay.
was involved, yeah, and I was involved in this startup group.
Mm.
Um, well, we were coaches, and we were trying to get this thing started online. But the point was that he took me through this exercise that he does, because he wanted us all to be like doing our best personal work, being our personally strongest and everything. So, and he asked me, so we're in this conversation.
Right.
And he asked me, first of all, he says, okay, so Allie, how old are you? I'll tell him I'm 62. And he says, okay. He says, what was life like when you were 50? And, oh,
Mm,
those were good years. I was, losing weight. I was um changing in ways that I didn't think I could. It's like, oh, good. What was life like when you were 40 and
mm,
30 and 20 and 10? And so then I start to go through stories of my second husband who I left because of financial problems because he had a gambling addiction
okay.
and and yeah, and also ended up having a drug addiction that I was going to Gam-Anon and it wasn't stopping. And he wasn't going to meetings. I was going to the Gam-Anon meeting, which are for the family
Right.
and love for loved ones of people to see. It's for us though, is to see how we are feeding what's going on in us that this is going on in our lives, right? It's not about the other person. So I'm going to these meetings, but he's not going to anything. And so I
Mm,
left and my first husband beat me. That happens with kids who are abused. They end up in marriages where things like that are happening. And
right.
at 10, the child abuse was happening, the sexual abuse was happening. And so by the end of this conversation, I am just weeping. And he says, Allie, he says, it looks to me, it's like I can see this overview of your life where you're just looking at, am I safe? Am I safe?
Mm,
And I feel like that happens with a lot of us. It's like it's it's not, in fact, it's almost like universal. It's different for different people, but we're all looking for that safety, right? And
mm,
but
right.
it was the first time that I had seen it in that way. And it was just, I felt so much compassion for that child, right? In this conversation, and he says, Allie, I want you, are you ready to take on a challenge? And I said, I would, because I'm seeing by now that when I take on these challenges, I get stronger by them. So I say yes.
Mm.
And he said, well, I, I want you to go out and tell your story to 30 people in 30 days.
Ooh.
And this was like, yeah, yeah. Oh, and this was like huge.
Oh, you and I have similar stories. Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because because this ended up being the turning point. I went and I found women. I was in a women's empowerment group. People that were part of this small group, that this startup that we were doing on trying to create online, and people from a coaching program that I had been in, and old old friend, and just 30 people. I did it. 30 people in 30 days. I made it just under the wire. The last one was on that 30th day, but I made it under the wire. And what I came to see was, it's like, oh my God, these people aren't reviling me. They aren't hating on me. They are just listening and holding space. And that was just like, I was shocked. I was like amazed by that. There was this one woman, I got to admit, it's like this is going to happen when you tell your story too. There was one woman who I could see was like very uncomfortable, very squirmy. And
Mm,
I almost felt sorry for her. It's like, okay, but I finished telling my story to her and she so that's what makes us uncomfortable when people are squirming and it's like, oh, it's kind of icky, you feel like, oh, that's kind of icky. I don't want to hear this. And I don't know what she'd been through though, you know? So, but mostly it was, yeah, go tell your story, Allie. I'm so proud of you, Allie. And
mm,
my best friend said, yeah, she said, oh, now I see you ended up with him because she had helped me she had helped me through my first marriage, like to get out of it. She had been an
Wow.
integral force in my getting out of it. And she says, "Oh, now I see why you ended up with him," because I hadn't told her about the childhood, you
Right.
know.
In other
And
words, you suppressed it.
yeah, I suppressed it. I suppressed it. We
Okay.
kept keeping small, keeping hidden. But now I was like, you know what? Forget all this. I am not holding back any more, and yeah. So and that led to finding Perry Power, and that led to
Right.
writing my book. And yeah, so
That's amazing. Yes, yes. And I'm in actually Perry Power's Facebook group because of Allie McDonnell, because of our friend. And you and Allie have similar stories. So,
yeah, we do.
yeah, you have similar stories. And now you've become empowered. You wrote a book, and now you're helping other women as well, because to suppress those feelings for so many years, and you reached the turning, you reached your breaking point. I would say, your turning point, like for myself, I went live on Facebook in March of 2018 because I was in a mentorship group. And in the mentorship group, my mentor said, "You haven't shared your story with the world." I said, "Nope." Of my domestic violence. See, because I kept it inside. And when you keep things inside, you start to
Mhm.
attract the wrong people. And that's what happened to me. But as soon as I shared my story with the world, 7 million views later. So people were impacted with my
Yeah.
story of claiming victory from domestic violence. Now, during this whole healing process, did you, because we evolve, in my case, and probably in your case as well, we evolve by recognizing our triggers. So, was there a lot of shadow work involved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I would say yes, there was a lot of it. A lot of it had to do with forgiving myself and coming to terms with what had happened. Um, that way, yeah. So it's what happened. It's what I did. It's what I did too. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
and I had to just come to terms with that. It wasn't like it's beyond, oh, it wasn't your fault. It's just that's what happened. And I had to forgive myself for that. Just
Ah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's not our fault. When I mean the child, it's not the child's fault. The child has no
okay.
they have no tools to work with abuse, you know. But it was coming to terms with how did I get to be 18 years old until it actually stopped. It actually ended, you know?
Mm,
And so that was hard. That took some shadow work. And it took a lot of years after that because I was still, yeah, it ended, but I was still holding it in, not talking about it, keeping small. And I felt like, people, it's like I finally realized that's another thing I realized is that people didn't really know me. They didn't know me. That's one
mm,
of the things that one of my friends said when I shared the story with her. She's like, Allie, I feel like I know you. I really know you. And it's like, yeah, thanks. And that's what we want. We want to be seen, and we want to be seen without all the judgment, we don't want people trying to fix us,
right.
or,
There you go. There you go. You just
you
took the
know?
words right out of my mouth. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't want to be sit and be judged. And unfortunately, some family members will judge you, and some people who you feel are your friends will judge you. Yeah. So, yeah. So yeah, I could certainly understand, because, like I was coached and I was mentored, And yes, I mean, that inner child, there's a wound there. And you chose forgiveness, and forgiveness is so important. You're forgiving yourself and you're setting yourself free.
Yeah.
You're setting
Yeah.
yourself free. So, yes, definitely. And I would love to talk about the book. So, let's talk about Walking Out of Shame and the quote that you wrote. So, what inspired you to write your book?
Well, what inspired me was I had taken this coaching course and I was still kind of fumbling around with trying to create a coaching program, doing that kind of thing. And I was talking to a wonderful woman who, when I started talking to her about who I thought I could serve and what was really in my heart about the way I wanted to serve, she told me I needed to talk to Perry Power. He said, "Oh, I know the person for you. This is the person you need to talk to." And so that's when I got involved with Perry Power. And he said, yeah, it was like all about you can write a book, you can break out of your story and all of that. And I was like, yeah, this is a person I need to connect with. And so I did and got into his program. I didn't think I could afford it, but at first, but I did it. And I actually happened to be the first person to publish my book out of his program. So now there are 14
Ooh,
books 14, I think, that have been published out of this program. And I was the first.
that's
So it
great.
was like,
Congratulations.
yeah,
See, you
really,
stepped into your power and you had the
yeah,
courage to make the investment, because
yes.
there are a lot of women who are afraid, like when it comes to money, they're afraid to invest in themselves, but you had the courage to come up with the money.
Well, it was, yeah,
But
I
it's
was
more
just,
than that. It's more than that.
there was just this huge yes in me. And then I just like, this is it. This is what I want. This is the next step. This is it. This is the next step. Um,
Right, right.
And yeah, if there are people out there who are interested in doing that kind of thing, like coming to terms with your story and talking to other people who have stories like yours, yeah, the Power Tribe is just a wonderful place. And you said you're in the Power Tribe, right?
I
You're
am
in
in the
that
Power
group.
Tribe group. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, yes.
So,
It's a great group. Perry is very inspiring. And I will contact him because he is amazing. And I do want to write my book. I'm a
well, there you
co-author of a book
go.
series, which is great, but I want to write my book,
There
my
you
story.
go.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
yeah. So anybody who's and it's through school. It's a program called School,
Okay.
SKOOL. Right. Isn't that the program you're in? Or are you in the Facebook program? I mean, in the Facebook group.
I am. I am.
No,
Yes.
which one? On school?
No.
Oh, it's on Facebook. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So you can do that. You can do that too. You can get into
Oh,
the
good.
Facebook program into the Facebook group on Facebook.
Right.
So yeah. Uh,
That's okay.
stumbling a
No,
little
that's
bit
okay.
here.
That's okay.
But yeah.
No, that's
And
great. And yeah,
I'll show
because
you, I'll show you the cover. This is the book,
yes, I
Walking
want
Out
to
of
see the
Shame.
cover. See it. Oh, I love the cover of the book.
Oh,
Now, is
thanks.
it available on Amazon?
It is. It's on Amazon, and we can put a
Link.
link to the book under, any of these videos. So,
Fine. Okay. Because what's
yeah.
going to happen? Yes, actually, after this live is over, then we'll put the link in there. We'll put the link in the live, and also this actual live will be on Spotify, and the link will be in the show notes. The link to purchase
Okay.
the book will be in the show notes. So very, very,
Beautiful.
because your story is all about empowerment. It's all about healing. It's all about resilience. And
Yeah.
what you wrote, meaning that you believe see that when we accept our past, we can be embraced, loved, strengthened, and empowered by the sharing of our stories in safe places. And that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I began my podcast 5 years ago. I started my podcast because this is a safe space. This is a safe
Yeah.
platform for women like yourself to share your story. And Allie has shared her story, and so many women have become authors, speakers, um, because we have a story to share. So, do you feel that this issue of childhood sexual trauma is shoved under the carpet?
I think the beautiful thing is I would have said yes not so long ago, but I think we're on a groundswell now of that it's coming out. I feel like more and more it's coming out. We're talking more about trauma and what it does to our brains and how it
Mm,
affects our lives. And I think that's happening right now. So, yes, it can be swept under the carpet, but I think we're getting more and more and more permission these days by people like you, Angeline, who are putting people like me on podcasts to let that go, to like
mm.
be who like admit what's happened to us because our story, it's not who we are. And until we tell our story though somehow it we're stuck with that. We think it is who we are. We're believing it is who we are. And in the telling of your story, you get to see, no, it's just a story of something that you went through. And it's not now, and it's not actually who you are. It's not your identity, you know?
Right, there you go. There you go. It's not your identity.
It's
Exactly.
not your identity. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, okay, exactly.
So something I'd like to take say too about forgiveness.
Let's talk
It
about
was
that.
it
Forgiveness.
was very, thank you. It was very important to me to acknowledge my feelings, my rage, my confusion, all of that, because before I could actually forgive. There comes a point where I could say, yeah, my dad was abused too. He had a father who was beating him with a stick. And my mom went through a lot with my dad. She married him at 15. I mean, 16, and she had me at 16. So, but she met him when she was 15. And so he almost brought her up the way he did me. Like it was almost like bringing up a child, the way that relationship started out. And so this is what my parents went through. And I thought, yeah, I can understand that. I get what happened. I get what happened here. That's not yet forgiveness, though. Not until you can say, yeah, I was full of rage, though. I was hurt.
Sure.
And so you can't just bypass that is what I'm trying to say. So it has to be both. You can say, yes, I understand. I get it. I can see what happened there that led to this.
Mm,
And but this is how I felt about it. And you have to get in touch with that inner child who went through that too. It
mm.
takes all of that. It takes all of that. Otherwise, it's bypassing. It's not real forgiveness. That's what I feel on that subject.
And I agree. I
Um,
agree with you 100% on that. I agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
yeah.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. And what is a special message that you would love to share with our listeners who will be listening to the podcast on Wednesday?
I I want to say open the door. Uh, if you want to heal, you have to open the door. I've met a lot of people who just feel like they are so mired, and I was too. I was too, so mired in my situation, in in the circumstances, that I didn't think that I could do anything but what I was doing, which was hide, which was keep
Uh,
myself small, which was not let myself be known. I didn't think there was anything else I could do. And I'm here to say that that's not the truth. Um, you can heal, and you don't have to know how. You don't have to know how it's going to happen. You don't have to say, okay, I know it's steps, these 5 simple steps. No, you don't have to know how. Go at it with curiosity and just leave the door open and say, yes, I want to heal. I want to be done with my pain.
there you go. There you go. There you go. You want to be done with your pain and also turn your pain into purpose. So we actually have
Yes.
a few people who are actually joining the live right now on Facebook. So I can't read it here from the laptop. But Lily Gray, she said, "Thank you. I needed to hear this." And Tanya Moore, your book is so inspiring, Allie. So
Uh,
yes, Tanya, welcome to the live. Thank you so much
Thank you for
for
being here,
joining
Tanya.
us. Yes, we can't see the comments here on the laptop, but Lily writes, I want to write mine as well. God spoke to me in 2000, I think in 2016 to write my story. Embarrassing. So, what would your answer to be to that? What would your advice be?
Say that again. What was the question?
Okay, I want to write mine as well. So Lily's in my Facebook group and she wants to write her book. God spoke to me in 2015 to write my story, but she felt embarrassed. In other words, embarrassing. So how do we come out of
Okay.
that? Yeah, so how
Okay.
do we come out of that? That's a good question. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
love for you to shed light on that.
So one of the things I talk about in my book is I love Brene Brown, and
Mm,
she she makes a distinction between words like guilt, embarrassment, shame, and humiliation. Those are actually all subtly different things.
mm,
Embarrassment is when you feel like you did something wrong, and it's but or not wrong, excuse me. You feel like you've done something that was uncomfortable, like hurt your pride, whatever, but other people have done it. Like there's something in this. It's like, oh, okay, this is something that other people have been through too. But when you're in shame, you don't know that. You don't see that.
oh, you don't realize
It's
that.
like no, many times you don't. It's like, oh no, I'm just a bad person. And if anybody knows what I really am, I can't be loved. So how do we come out of that? We
Right.
come
How
out.
do we come out of that? I mean, I know I was embarrassed too to share my story. And I'm sure
Mhm.
you were too, but there is like a turning point, or like in my case, my mentor lit a light bulb and he lit the fire in me. And I went live like this with the camera, the
Yeah.
phone. I had no laptop and I'm shaking. I spoke for 18 minutes on live and it went to 7 million views. There you
Yeah.
go. And that means that 7 million people were impacted by my story, which led me later to start my podcast. And then also, starting to, I spoke at an event, mastermind event last year. I'm getting out there because our
Yeah.
message needs to be heard. Our message
Yeah.
must be heard because if not, because there's so much injustice today in the judicial system. And there was actually a study that trauma can cause brain damage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could cause severe
The
brain damage. So this is serious, everyone. And we need to
beautiful.
bring light and we need to, bring this out in the open, bring this to our legislatures, to Congress, to have more enforcement, to have more law enforcement, and to have rules in place, because there are people who I know, like I have a very good friend who almost died last year in December, and her abuser was out of prison 2 months before. I'm like, okay, how does that happen? You see that? But we can't be afraid. See, we cannot be afraid to share our stories. And Lily also writes, yes, childhood sexual trauma is real. And Tanya writes, absolutely, Allie, so true. And yeah, I mean, our stories must be heard. So that's why, you know, we have a voice and we have a platform here.
So I want to also say that it took me a long time to tell my story, and you don't necessarily have to like just kind of boom and try to do it all at once. No, what you
There you
do
go.
is you start by telling yourself the story. Start by investigating the story yourself. Like I used journaling and I used writing my book itself to tell myself the story. And that's a beginning. Even if you do nothing else, that's a huge beginning. And
Mm,
then you find people who are safe. The way you do that is you tell them small things. Like you don't come out and tell them this is my biggest, darkest secret right away, right? You you tell them small things. And what do they do with that? Do they go gossip? Well, that's not your person,
there
you
you go.
know. Um, do they shun you after that? That's not your person. Tell
That's
them
right.
small things. You do it in increments, and then you find somebody you trust to connect with to tell
Mm,
your story that way. You just start by telling your story as bravely as you know how in the moment.
right.
So, yeah, yeah. And like you said, it makes a difference. It makes such a difference, Angeline.
It does.
And made a difference in me. I feel so much freer now because I'm not carrying that. I'm not carrying that. I don't care who finds out now, obviously, you know,
Right, exactly. And we
and that
can't
is
be
so
afraid
freeing.
about, and that was my biggest fear. What are people going to think of me? I think that's the biggest fear that women face. And guess what? There's no fear. There's push that fear out the window. Just that's it. That's it. Because because fear will cripple you.
Yeah.
It will hinder you.
And your story will be for some people and it will not be for
Mm,
others,
right.
and they may even, they may even have, like if it's on its social media, especially, they may have some awful things to say about it. Just those are not your people. Those are not the ones you're trying to talk to. So that's okay, you know? Just when you look at those harsh comments, when you look at those, it's like, okay, this is not the person I was after anyway. This is not the person I was trying to reach, and keep going. No,
Mm.
keep
Exactly.
going.
Keep going. So Lily writes, that's my biggest fear. See, her
Th-
biggest fear is writing the book and sharing her story. That's from what I'm understanding, Lily. If I'm not mistaken. And guess what? I've been there. You and I have been there.
Yeah, almost everybody. So we have these conversations every week. The people in the powerful books community,
Okay.
and um all of us who are writing our books, we have meetings, and I can't think of one of them who has not talked about going through this
See?
in one version or another. I'm afraid this person will find out. I'm afraid, I'm
Right.
afraid, yeah, of what this person will think. I'm afraid of hurting this person. I'm, it was easier for me in a certain sense because my father's gone. He died in 1992. So he's gone. But
Okay.
my mother was still alive, and
Mm.
I did not want to hurt her. I didn't. But I
See?
had to write my book. I had to write my book, you know. So I can't think of anybody who hasn't gone through some version of that. So it's normal, like it is normal, but it is worth it to feel into it. And if what happens is you write your book or you do your journaling and nobody ever sees it, if that's as far as you get,
Okay.
still something. That's still something. That's still healing for you. Some
Exactly.
people have written their books, some people have written their books thinking I might never publish this, and they still do. So it's a journey. It's a journey.
Ah, there you go. There you go. It is a journey. Life is a journey. Exactly. And actually, a very good friend of mine just published her book, and she worked on it for, I think, a year and a half, but she finally published it.
Hmm.
She finally published it. So it's all in God's timing. Oh, we have another. Let me just see what Lily says. Yes, what people will think about me now. Okay. And Samantha Smith. Hi, good morning, sis. Spread the smiles and sunshine, y'all. I love it. We always do, sis, don't we? Don't we? Yes. Oh my goodness. This was such a great interview and this was a great conversation. Allie, thank you so much for being on my podcast show, Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. So if you are a woman who wants to share her story, share your story of claiming victory from domestic violence or childhood sexual trauma, please book a call with me at letsbreakthesilence.com so we can get you on my show and share your incredible story, which is going to make an impact on the world. And please check out my website for my coaching programs that help you move from a place of loss, overwhelm, and loss and overwhelm, and I help you gain clarity and I help you move into healing and empowerment after domestic violence. So please check out my coaching programs on letsbreakthesilence.com. And obviously, please follow and like my podcast because you have a voice and your voice must be heard. And you can turn your pain into purpose. So I'm going to end the live broadcast right now. Thank you so much, Allie, for being on my podcast show. We have weekly podcast shows every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Look for this live on my YouTube channel, which is Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. And actually, the link is on my website. That will be posted in the show notes and on the live here as well. And Allie, stay in the green room for a second. I want to wish you all an amazing day. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Tanya, for tuning in, taking time out of your busy schedule. And if you are catching this replay, please let us know what your thoughts are. We would love your feedback. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful day, everyone.